And I've seen sort of new players coming into the industry and sort of playing into that and utilizing AI and everything remotely and essentially eliminating the human element from the whole process. But as I said, I think that kind of leads you to a corner in a sense that, you know, you don't have those interpersonal relationships. You don't know to the core where the data is coming from or what's behind the data. Sometimes, and perhaps more often than not, especially with the patients, you need to speak to them to figure out whether a certain test or certain result on a questionnaire is still valid. Are there any sort of other factors playing into that? Is it just the investigator, the medicinal product that you're looking, or it might be something else that's going on in their life? So we're designing those drugs for humans, right? So we have to keep that in mind. And we have to kind of keep that in mind, and we cannot completely eliminate that.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the podcast. Yeah, so today we have a very special guest, Rauno Oja from EGeen International. We're really great to have you, and really looking forward to this podcast. We typically dive into a lot of pharma, tech, business types of topics, and I think he has a very, very unique and very, very interesting perspective on a lot of topics, and we can weave a lot of interesting things into the conversation. So welcome. You want to start off maybe just introducing yourself, and we can take it from there.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So as you said, my name is Rauno Oja, and I'm the CEO of EGeen International, which is a full service global clinical research organization. Yeah, happy to dive in.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, let me start off like a little bit about your background, and I know from initial call you have a very unique kind of path to becoming CEO in this space. So maybe we touch on a little bit of that, or really take anything you think is very interesting. I think there's a lot to cover there. So.
Yes, I mean, it is perhaps somewhat unique in a sense that I do not have medical nor scientific background. I studied business administration, and I'm sort of on the economic background side of things. And I joined EGeen immediately after university. I think the next day after my graduation, I signed the contract and joined the world of health sciences and pharmaceutical, which was completely new to me at the time, but sounded very interesting, and I just kept digging and dug myself into the role of the CEO, I guess.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. You had a very unique. I think that's a lot of people jump around, but starting at a corporation and then continuing is a very. I think like in the 50s it was unique, but now it's sort of rare. So you guys probably have from my perspective a very awesome thing going on there. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good company to be in. I love the people. I love the business, and I mean, I made a deal with myself when I joined that I'll stick along as long as I have something to learn still in there. So maybe I'm a slow learner.
Oh no, yeah, it didn't come off like that for me. So what problems are you most interested in solving? Not just through the company, maybe we can take a step back and like think in a higher level, and coming from a business background, there's obviously some kind of like impetus for joining pharma rather than I see people with business backgrounds, they can really, a lot of them like, oh hey, what's the highest growing industry, or what's the most cutting edge or most kind of clickbait type of industry to join. It doesn't seem like your journey has been like that. So I just wanted to probe a little bit around, if you have any thoughts there on that kind of.
Yes. So no, it's I did join out of pure sort of challenge, or I did like the idea of that. I didn't know much about the whole process, so that in itself was enticing to me. And in terms of problems to solve, I think it's always been sort of a sense of pragmatism and sense of efficiency and efficient solutions in the world. And one of the things that annoys me the most is this sort of inefficiency, and not to have the sort of a clickbait statement there, but in today's world where everybody seems to be multitasking and doing everything at once, and you have all these tools and AIs and so on, we're not very efficient bunch, and that kind of is something that I see we can definitely help on improving.
Absolutely. Yeah. That seems to be a very important topic, and you talk about all these like new AI tools coming in and everything that
Yeah, absolutely.
It can absolutely help efficiency. Although I think I can't remember there's some study I saw the other day that shows the impact is only marginal at this point, and very
Yes.
very, very small from all these new advancements in AI. But is that what you're seeing, or are you seeing it's kind of
Well,
like just kind of toes just kind of getting in the water with all the tools? Because I see lots of
right.
tools. A lot of people like you see outside of pharma, all these agents being
Yeah.
run to like handle calls and things like that.
Well,
Literally everything. Yeah. So how are you
no, but
guys?
it's
How are you guys looking at that? Is it yeah.
well, for me, it's with AI, it's always a matter of input. So
Mm,
what you put in is what you get out. So you have to have, in a sense, that proficiency to understand what is it that you're actually asking for and chasing for. Because AI will, do a lot of tasks for you and do them very quickly and very well. But if that's not the task, or that's not the problem you're trying to resolve in the first place, that's just a waste of computational power in a sense, right? So AI, in a sense, is making things faster. Yes, it makes things easier for people to do some of these tasks that they're usually are maybe not as willing to do, and kind of are time consuming and sort of memory capacity requiring. But again, if you don't know the direction you want to go, you can get there fast, but that doesn't really help you much. So it's a powerful tool, but we have to kind of keep in mind that's what it is. It's a tool, right? We still need those people and that kind of strategic thinking in terms of what are we actually trying to achieve with using the AI and all of those tools that we have at our advantage.
Yeah, that's super interesting. That's what I've seen. Like in you guys are more later stage clinical focus. My career has a lot been started more early stage.
Yeah.
Doing basic research and how you translate that. But that's exactly what I saw was, hey, we might be great marathon runners that are running faster, but if the end result is wrong, you're running to the
Yeah.
wrong place, even if you're running fast.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
It's like you're trying to win the wrong race, and
Yeah.
that's a big thing of mine are the goals are the goals precisely defined and everything. It sounds
Yeah.
like sounds like you're really focused on that as well, not just hey, we're gonna put together a shiny new tool.
Yes, absolutely. And it's interesting to note that some time ago, the goal of utilizing these computer tools and various platforms was to reduce the exposure to human error, right? Because we thought machines are insignificantly better at doing some calculations and some things. Now we're at a stage where we kind of have to be careful of that, and you start trusting humans more again, because AI is sort of having their own delusional thoughts and sort of propositions there that you have to be extra careful.
Sure.
Then, and maybe you don't trust the computer or the artificial intelligence as much as that. So it's a nice tightrope that you have to keep in mind and balance as you're walking along.
Oh, yeah, very cool. Absolutely. Yeah, maybe we can get a little bit now into EGeen, and
Sure.
you've been there for a long time, and it sounds like you're kind of joined on the ground floor. How did that kind of story
Yeah.
unfold, and what was the kind of background behind, at least for a lot of the I don't know if this is the case with your firm or not, but a lot of the companies that I've seen and everything have a kind of a story like, hey, there was a problem identified that we're kind of jumping into the niche to solve. How did that kind of process unfold for your firm?
Yes. As the name may suggest, initially the company was actually pursuing establishing a first of a kind sort of a genome bank here, in Estonia to gather samples and to put them to use in clinical research and clinical trials. that was, sort of early 2000s, and that was the new hot thing on the streets, and I guess people were very hopeful that this is going that this sequencing and personalized medicine is something that's going to change the world immediately, as soon as we kind of figured out the process. But it's taking a little more time. Even now, it's pretty difficult to pinpoint exact mutations to certain diseases and so on. We may
like
have
the
a
driver
connection
is the
there.
disease. Yeah.
Exactly. So we
Yeah.
may know what mutations we have, but there's not much use if we don't know what to do with them, or how to fix them, in a sense, and how to manage that. So at the time, shortly after, it was becoming sort of obvious that it was difficult to find commercial success immediately, in that EGeen went into the business of clinical research, and became initially as a sort of a regional CRO in the Baltic states and Eastern Europe, but then expanded pretty quickly to Europe as a whole, not just European Union, but also outside of it, sort of Ukraine, Georgia, Armenia, countries that are kind of on the outskirts of European Union, and then having that strong presence still in US, where a lot of the innovation in biotech and pharma comes from, and having that sort of network and headquarters there in California has helped a lot, of course. No, yes, initially, so we were just as a monitoring organization, and maintaining regulatory documentation, and keeping up with the submissions. But again, over the course of 20 plus years, we became essentially a full service organization, and to date, we are providing all sorts of services, including sort of strategic advisory services, and regulatory affairs management, and safety, and medical writing, data analysis, everything that you need essentially to get from point A to point B.
Oh, for clinical trials, everything from point A
Exactly.
to point B. Yeah. Of that, what do you think is the biggest strength of the, who are the kind of ideal customer that you generally reach out for and look for?
Yes. So I think the strength kind of lies in our hands-on approach, and especially in these days after COVID, there's a lot of risk-based monitoring or remote monitoring being done, and that's never something that we kind of leaned into very much, because we understood that there's a lot of value in interpersonal relationships with managing the sites, and going on a monitoring visit doesn't necessarily mean that you have to spend all of the time there monitoring things. It is very useful just to help you resolve some of those small logistics issues or administrative issues that the sites might be having, including, and very importantly, recruitment issues, which I think is one of the strong suits for us, and we've had the pleasure and opportunity to be in some friendly competitions with some of the US CROs in phase 2 and phase 3 trials, and had a bit of a competitive battle there, and came out on top in terms of the whole number of patients recruited in the total amount of time. And I think the strength is, or that achievement is essentially achieved by that strength of recruitment and interpersonal relationships with the sites and investigators.
Sure. Yeah. Because I know in some of the projects I worked on, we've always been like, who are the patients, and can we find them, even if we develop a molecule or something? Is the patient population out there that we can run a succccessful trial? So
yes, and can you find them, and more
Yeah.
importantly, can you keep them in as well, right? So that's another thing that you need to keep in mind, especially for lengthier trials, is how do you manage those patients, and how much visibility you have on the actual recruitment. What you want to avoid is the situation where, yes, you've opened hundreds of sites globally, and then you're just kind of sitting around and waiting for the patients to come in, right?
Sure.
You know, instead, by focusing on, okay, what can we do to find those patients, and sort of making that effort to either pre-screen or talk to the investigators, maybe find out what are the referral options in there, figuring out, you know, who holds the data, how is it possible for the investigators to access it, what are the main criteria or main reasons for potential screening failures, eliminating those with the initial design of the protocol, and trying to find a solution whereby, you know, it's possible for the sites to succeed, right? Because, you know, we're both interested in that, but sometimes the CROs and the sponsors don't put the sites in the best position to achieve success. So yeah.
Oh, interesting. So there could be some advice there from the site as well to say, hey, you guys, you know, should probably, you know, here's some advice that's needed to ensure that not only the overall trial is successful, but also the site and how they're managing things is run well. Is that
Exactly?
that,
And then what's you know, what's the standard approach for that? You know, what types of tests are being done? How long does it take? You know, are those tests available? So usually the way it goes, it's kind of a top-down mentality, right? Where the sponsor gives you the protocol, it's handed
Sure.
down to the CRO, then to the lab vendor, to the investigator sites, to the pharmacies, and so on. And then they initiate everything, probably spend 6 months or so on you know, putting everything together and getting everything ready, and open the sites, and then month goes by, it's quiet, and then they start investigating, go, what's the problem, what are the issues that we're facing? And then it turns out there's something perhaps in the standard therapy that is used in that country that either, you know, prohibits the participation in that trial, or there's a certain test that isn't being done on a regular basis on those patients, and that usually takes, you know, 4 to 6 weeks to find the results for, and there are certain logistical issues that start getting in the way. But by then you start, when you start resolving them, you're already 6 months in, right? You've already lost those 6 months, and you're kind of starting from the scratch in some sense. So from our point of view, it's very important to gather that information as much as possible, and almost do sort of this mock exercise with the investigator sites. So, okay, you know, here's the protocol. You don't need to approach anybody. You don't actually need to do any you know, any of the procedures on patients. But can you walk us through what's the typical process for that site? You know, and kind of playing through that scenario, and figuring out where those details might become, you know, stepping stones or possible pitfalls for us.
Oh, sure. So it's like, you know, trying to do a dry run before initiating. So you're
Exactly.
like kind of thinking all the way to the end rather than, you know, just, you know, taking the next few steps saying, hey, what are the problems we think we're going to run into based on, and
Yeah.
it was interesting. You mentioned about the country and the different treatment. You know, I've run into that as well. There's different treatment protocols in each country. And then you kind of have to unravel all of that and ensure that one site is, you know, kind of performing and not performing, but like comparable to the rest.
Yes.
You know, we saw this in one trial at Run that they were, you know, there's a different standard of care, and then you're looking at it, and you're, you know, you have to be. We had to be very, very careful there, and kind of open my eyes as a, you know, I'm approaching it from more of a basic research kind of chemistry, you know, earlier up the pipeline type of person, and you know, learning that was very key. So yeah, that's
another important point, right, for the investigators as well. I mean, certainly we understand, we're in business, right? We understand that there are financial motivations for investigators and for sites to participate as well, but there is still a lot being driven by their, you know, sort of academic experience or interest in that, and perhaps engaging them early on, either via conversations and discussions around protocol or the study design or the scientific justification for that, or perhaps even the whole overall strategy for the company, and kind of keeping them in the loop on that and getting their opinion kind of keeps them engaged, right? They perhaps have more motivation to pick up the call when you're actually calling to them,
I was talking about
yes.
engaging them very early in the process, even before a trial may be initiated or signed, or, you know, having
Yeah, I
developed
mean,
very, very strong relationships that, yeah.
exactly, and that kind of helps both ways, right? The investigators feel motivated, feel valued, you know, that their opinion is being heard. At the same
Mm.
time, the sponsor, the CROs, this is kind of valuable information for us as well. And if we can get it ahead of time before we actually start running into those issues, that saves a
Sure.
lot of hassle down the line. Absolutely.
Yeah, and they probably, I don't know if this is right or not, but they might feel more confident speaking out if they see some issue that needs to be headed off. Very cool. Yeah, very, very interesting. Yeah, so maybe taking a step back to the, that where do you see the field heading as a whole? Is it heading more where there's more integration, more kind of looping back to the beginning of the conversation, we talked about efficiency. Do you see more of that, or then we talked about like the reach out and the relationship building as well? And sometimes there can be like a two-sided coin where you see efficiency takes people away from the relationship building. Do you see that kind of, or how do you see the future of the kind of industry and the collaborations and partnerships going? Is there?
Yeah, it's certainly interesting. I mean, we had a very unusual case of living through COVID, and that's a kind of an extreme example of giving certain processes in the industry a nudge, essentially. Before COVID, a lot of the companies were still using paper documentation, for example, had a lot of face-to-face meetings, did not perhaps have the best technological solutions available to us in the industry as a whole, in biotech, in pharmaceutical industry. We're not quite there yet. I mean, the IT and AI and everything is sort of leading the way, and we were always catching up. But out of necessity during COVID, that kind of got enforced, and I think it kind of overcorrected a little bit. So as I said, people started figuring out we don't have to go everywhere. We can monitor remotely, and we can do sort of these things remotely, and perhaps automate a lot of these things. And I've seen sort of new players coming into the industry and sort of playing into that and utilizing AI and everything remotely, and essentially eliminating the human element from the whole process. But as I said, I think that kind of leads you to a corner, in a sense that you don't have those interpersonal relationships. You don't know to the core where the data is coming from or what's behind the data. Sometimes and perhaps more often than not, especially with the patients, you need to speak to them to figure out whether a certain test or certain result on a questionnaire is still valid. Are there any sort of other factors playing into that? Is it just the investigator, the medicinal product that you're looking, or it might be something else that's going on in their life? So you cannot, we're designing those drugs for humans, right? So we have to keep that in mind, and we have to kind of keep that in mind, and we cannot completely eliminate that. So I think in the industry as a whole, there will certainly be a lot of push and sort of power in the AI coming along and helping us becoming more efficient in the way we do things and making it more convenient. But hopefully that also means that people will actually have more time to spend and focus on the other side of the aspect, which is those interpersonal relationships and kind of thinking along with other human beings, and not just in the thought bubble and kind of bouncing ideas back and forth with an AI agent.
Yeah, that I don't know. That's a super interesting thing. I think kind of crystallized here for me for a long time. It's like, what do you automate? And if you have certain processes automated, then what do you spend the free time on? And it sounds like you're kind of advocating, hey, we're going to automate things, and that's going to enable us to focus on what humans do best, which is talking to, other patients, other investigators. That's a super interesting way to look at it, I think. Then, I always think like, oh, it's going to automate this coding, or it's going to automate this reach out, or it's going to automate whatever it's going to automate. And then, it gets to the point where, I can focus on other maybe higher level technology problems. But I don't think about like, hey, this offloads all this kind of grunt work, so I can focus on reaching out to more people, and I can focus on strengthening my relationships. And that's very, very cool. Yeah,
exactly. And from a CRO point of view, even if you go back 10 years, there was a lot of paper lifting, literally paper lifting, physical paper. Now, especially after COVID, that has kind of accelerated quite a bit, and almost with most of the documentation, you can get away with having them in a digital form. So that in itself has already freed up a lot of time for the CRO. So yes, you don't need that much time and resources being spent on that. And then the question becomes, okay, what are the other elements where we can add value as a CRO? Whether that would be sort of advising the clients that we have on what their strategic pathway should be, because they may be doing that for the first time. If they have a great set of people on board, maybe it's their fourth, fifth time, but collaboratively as both units and CROs, we see a lot of those situations, right? So we know a little bit what the background is, how companies have waited in the past, and what were the solutions to some of the issues that another company might be having. So there's a lot of value, I think, in the experiences that we've had over the course of the years, and sort of being able to focus on that and jump in with the sponsors, kind of being in the same boat and thinking along, what is the goal of that clinical trial, not just going through the motions and getting to the data, but rather also trying to figure out, what is the data that we're trying to, and why are we trying to get that data?
Sure. So you can not only spend more in building interpersonal relationships, but also like focusing on what are the, overarching questions, or what are the higher level questions that what you're actually trying to order for answer. I mean, for the trial itself as well. Yeah, that's super interesting. So other trials you run are what are you most proud about that you guys have accomplished, or what are you most what's the kind of background of something that you'd like to highlight that's a very big a good like kind of case study for the success that you've had?
Right. So as I
don't know if there's anything you can talk about. I'm sure there's a lot of things going on.
I understand that. As I said in the beginning, I do like a challenge, and we've had several rare disease studies where either joining later on in competition with already existing CRO, and being in the region that was expanded, and to help out with the recruitment, and having a significant impact on that, or being responsible for the trial in it as a whole, for the whole recruitment, and then getting to the end line on time, on budget. I think that's where we as a company are most proud of that, and
Sure.
kind of
I know rare disease. Yeah, it can be very difficult to recruit patients. I have this.
Yeah, especially over the world.
All over. And then it's like a very distributed. The patients are so rare. You're at multiple sites, and there's a very few of them. And I know that seems to be a very, very tough field to play in. So
but also sometimes definitely the most rewarding as well. Rare diseases and sort of indications sometimes have orphan disease designations and things that allow you to actually find a solution a little bit quicker. Usually the life cycle of a drug getting to the market is perhaps more than some careers in companies. So in some cases it's good to be on that accelerated path and witnessing sort of the next step or the growth of certain products that you've been a part of, and kind of seeing that success while you're still in the game, essentially. It's great.
Yeah, so while you're at the company, being able to see it. Yeah. I mean, that's something I've run into too. You work on projects, you gotta hand them off, or at least in my background, it's always I've handed it off to somebody, and I think a lot of people in pharma have to do that. If you're at a company 3 years, you're not going to be there through approval of the drug, but being able to watch that must be really, that's
and especially considering large majority don't make it to the market, right? So in that sense, you lose a lot of those projects and studies that you've done that sometimes are shelved essentially and may never come back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so maybe now looking a little bit forward, what is what are your plans over the next 12 months as a company? Is there something that you're looking to grow, some area that you're looking to kind of expand, and how is that how are you kind of thinking about the growth of not just your firm, but the kind of the field as a whole?
I think as I said, with more time being freed up by certain automations and AI and whatnot, focusing more so on that strategic approach and working with the sponsors rather than for them, essentially, is something that I find definitely very interesting, and figuring out where in the whole value chain the CROs can have perhaps a bigger impact on the whole pathway of a drug getting to the market, and to whether it's by sort of these joint ventures or shared success, and various structures that would allow to have the CROs participate, have a bigger say in the whole design of that, and sort of being in the same boat with the sponsor. I think there's quite a lot of value in there, and that's, I think, the next sort of question that we would ideally like to solve, and figure out if we can have a bigger impact and bigger say, but also provide more value to the processes there as a CRO with all the experience that we've had.
Sure. No, yeah, absolutely. You guys certainly probably see, that's what the guys saw too, is when you partner with somebody that's focused on a specific area or service or whatever, they always typically have the most, they have the most experience because they've done it,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
most. So, it's always good to include them more, and then listen to what they say. And, I know some, I've had some, partnerships before earlier in my career that maybe didn't work out as well, just because, as the person who went out and initiated the partnership, I wasn't as willing to learn or listen as I should have been. So,
Yeah,
I think that's a very, very, very good point. That
but
yeah, it's like
sorry.
you make recommendations and the client doesn't listen, and you're like, well, yeah.
Well, yes, but also it's I wouldn't completely blame it on the sponsors in from that point of view. CROs, typically speaking, they run clinical trials on an hourly basis, essentially. So as I said, they
Sure.
want to, most of the time it's sort of going through the motions that is more valued rather than finding the solution to it. So that kind of motivates, I think, incorrectly the
Interesting.
CROs to kind of just sit around and not because they have no skin in the game, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
It's
getting
just a
paid on that.
matter
Yeah.
of getting the flow of the studies through, and then keeping everything and responsibility and everything to the sponsor. They decide whatever they want to do, we'll just do, right? Rather than having the incentive that okay, well, this is a joint project, we have some skin in the game, we want to succeed in this, let's get there as quickly as we can, as cost effectively as we can, and figure out what is it that we're trying to achieve with these clinical trials, rather than simply getting a study and then saying nothing and not even thinking about why is it for, what's it for, is the design adequate, and so on, and simply
Sure.
going through the motions, because at the end of the day, if the CRO still gets paid on that kind of doesn't matter. So yeah, we've always had a slightly different approach to that, and putting ourselves in the shoes of the sponsor, and also having the collaboration that we are both motivated by sharing data, and advising each other on what's the best approach there and best course of action.
Oh, sure. Then there's skin in the game. Then incentives are. So you're basically saying incentives are more closely aligned at that point. So there's, that makes a lot of sense. So
Yeah,
before
absolutely.
yeah, sorry, yeah. So before we wrap up here, is there anything that we haven't covered that you like to highlight about EGeen, or is there, some something else that we didn't dive into that you'd like to discuss?
Not in specific, not specifically, but
Okay.
yeah, we've been in business for 20 years, and as I said, we do like to approach things pragmatically, and sort of be mindful of what our position in the industry is, and perhaps have fruitful collaborations with partners that value us as a CRO as well, and if that's something that speaks to somebody, please don't hesitate to get in touch, because I'll be happy to just talk about how things are and how things should be and so on, even if you don't get anything else out of it. So happy to have an open conversation with everyone.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Everybody feel free to reach out. If you have any use for, if you have use for, I think that there's a lot of, listeners that would have, certainly trials underway or molecules that they're working on that, could definitely use it. So, should definitely reach out. But yeah, I think that's a wrap. I think we have a great perspectives on, quite a lot of topics there. And I just wanted to say, thank you for joining and highlighting your work. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.